DBT Interpersonal Effectiveness 1. We're now moving on to our next module, which is Interpersonal Effectiveness. There are 3 sections to the Interpersonal Effectiveness module. The first section would be obtaining objectives whilst maintaining relationships and self-respect. This includes Dear Man, which is our skill for getting what you want, Give, which is our skill for keeping a relationship, and Fast, which is our skill for keeping your self-respect. The second section is focused on building and maintaining relationships, decreasing isolation and building communication skills and sensitivity to maintain friendships, and ending destructive relationships. The third section involves walking the middle path. This includes balancing acceptance and change in our relationships, and balancing our own priorities with demands of others. So why might our interactions not be effective? Well, a lack of skill means that you don't know what to say or how to act. You haven't been able to learn by observing good social interactions. To learn a skill means to practice it over and over before it becomes automatic. Interactions might also not be effective because of indecision. You can't decide what you want, so you don't know what to ask for or say no to. You're stuck in extremes. Complete neediness, so asking in a begging or grasping manner, versus complete self-sufficiency, so never asking and saying yes to everything. Other extremes could be complete worthiness, so demanding or refusing, versus unworthiness, so never saying no. Another reason why our interactions might not be effective could be due to the interference from emotions. Emotions often get in the way from your ability to be effective. Skills are mood dependent, and acting in emotional mind means that actions, facial expressions and responses are automatic. We often prioritise short-term goals over long-term ones, so low distress tolerance means we go for what we want right now rather than thinking about what's effective in the long term. An example of this would be ending a relationship after an argument because you don't like conflict, or failure to consider the consequences, so making threats and demands when angry and then regretting it later when we realise what we want is less important than the relationship. Another thing that could get in the way of effective interactions would be interference from the environment. Other people refuse to give us what we want or act in harmful ways. Sometimes we can be fully skillful and still not be able to get what we want or get someone to like us. It's not a guarantee. Sometimes people believe that all failures to get what they want from someone else are failures in skills. They have difficulty seeing that sometimes the environment can affect even the most skilled individuals. Thus, when they fail to get what they want by using interpersonal effectiveness skills, they fall back into hopelessness, try an aggressive response, or threaten others. Although interpersonal effectiveness skills increase the likelihood of getting what you want, this will not always be the case. All people have some worries about standing up for themselves, expressing their opinion, or saying no and so on, especially if you think you don't deserve to get what you want. You can counteract these worries by checking the facts, practicing opposite action, and practicing cope ahead. Clarifying priorities is the first and most important interpersonal skill. It's the essential task of figuring out, number 1, what you actually want and how important it is, compared to 2, keeping a positive relationship, and 3, keeping your self-respect. In order to get what you want from relationships, you need to know what you want. There are 3 possible priorities. Number 1 would be objectives effectiveness. So what do I want to achieve? An example of this would be standing up for your rights, to be taken seriously, requesting somebody to do something, refusing an unreasonable request, resolving conflict, or getting your opinion across. Number 2 is relationship effectiveness. So how do I want the other person to feel? Examples of this are acting in a way that makes the other person want to help you, or balance immediate goals versus the long-term relationship. If you ignore your needs for someone else for too long, you'll end up frustrated and miserable, and the relationship probably won't last. Number 3 is self-respect effectiveness. So how do I want to feel about myself? This involves respecting your own values and beliefs whilst you try and obtain a goal. Acting in line with your values gives you a sense of mastery. Examples of this would be standing up for yourself, defending a friend, doing something brave, or voting for what you believe in. It's important to note here that it's not effective to always want or to have control or power, or to always be right, or to always get what we want. This can diminish our self-respect over time. You need to consider all three types of effectiveness in every situation, but sometimes one will be more important than the other. An example might be if your landlord unfairly keeps your deposit without anything having been damaged. Your objective might be to get the deposit back, which is most important. In terms of the relationship, you might want to keep the landlord's goodwill for a reference. And in terms of self-respect, you might not want to lose self-respect by getting emotional or threatening. We're now going to look at the skill for getting what you want out of a relationship. This is Dear Man. The D in Dear Man stands for describe the situation. Begin by briefly describing the situation you're reacting to. Stick to the facts, no judgmental statements. Be objective. Beginning an assertion by describing and observing the facts can be useful for a number of reasons. Number 1, it ensures the other person is oriented to the events leading to the request, opinion, refusal, or point of view. Number 2, it also helps the two parties get on the same page and begin a pattern of agreeing. And number 3, if the other person doesn't agree with the facts of the situation, it gives you a fair warning that the assertion might not be well received or successful. An example of describing could be, this is the third time you've asked me for a lift this week. Or, I bought this shirt 2 weeks ago and the receipt says I can return it within 30 days. The sales assistant refused to take it back, saying it was on sale, but my receipt says I can return it. So you're just describing the facts of the situation. The E in Dear Man stands for express clearly. Express clearly how you feel or what you believe about the situation. Don't expect the other person to read your mind or know how you feel. For example, you could give a brief rationale for a request or for saying no. By sharing your personal reactions to a situation, you're making it easier for the other person to figure out what you really want from the interaction. This can help alert them to what makes the situation important to you, and can draw personal interest to the situation. This might mean you feel vulnerable, but it has the advantage of providing important information to the other person. Carrying on from the last example, expressing clearly would mean you'd say something like, I'm getting home late, so it's really hard for me and my family. Or, I believe that I have the right to return this, and I'm distressed that your assistant would refuse to take it back, particularly because there's no damage to it and I have the receipt. It's important to note that you don't always need the D and E in Dear Man. For example, if you wanted someone to buy you a drink, you might just ask them, instead of describing, we're out and I'm thirsty. But you should still learn and practice each of these skills, even if you don't always need them. A stands for assert your wishes. Ask for what you want or say no clearly. Don't expect other people to know what you want them to do if you don't tell them. Don't beat around the bush, never really asking or saying no. Don't tell them what they should do. Be clear and concise, bite the bullet and ask or say no. An example would be, I have to say no tonight. I just can't give you a lift home so often. Or, will you accept my return on this shirt? Asking for something is not showing weakness. Also, asking is different from demanding. Asking is assertive, demanding can come across as aggressive. The R in Dear Man stands for reinforce. Reinforce the other person. Identify something positive or rewarding that would happen for the other person if he or she gives you the response you want. This might involve taking time to consider the other person's perspective and motivation, and drawing connections between what you're asking for and what the other person wants or needs. Alternatively, you could offer to do something for the other person if they do this thing for you. This is behavioural reinforcement. For example, I hope you understand that I can't always give you a lift. Or, I hope that we can sort this out so I can keep shopping here. The M in Dear Man stands for stay mindful. Stay mindful of your objectives in the situation. Maintain your position and avoid being distracted onto another topic. You can act like a broken record by repeatedly asking, or repeatedly saying no, or expressing your opinion over and over. This can involve starting the Dear formula again, or from any part that makes the most sense. You don't have to come up with something different to say every time. Just keep a mellow tone of voice and kill them with kindness. Or you can attempt to ignore attacks and diversions. If the other person attacks, threatens, or tries to change the subject, just keep making your point and don't take the bait. You can deal with the attacks later. The A in Dear Man stands for appear confident. Use a confident tone of voice, display a confident physical manner and posture with appropriate eye contact. This demands respect for what you want. No looking at the floor, whispering, or saying you're not sure. You don't have to be confident, you just have to appear confident. Fake it till you make it. Just note there's a fine line between appearing arrogant and apologetic. Appearing confident is the middle ground. The N in Dear Man stands for negotiate. Be willing to give to get. Offer and ask for alternative solutions to the problem, or reduce your request. Maintain your no, but offer to do something else or solve the problem another way. An example of this would be by saying, "What do you think we should do? I'm not able to say yes and you really seem to want me to. What can we do here? How can we solve this problem?" Turn the tables by turning the problem over to the other person and asking for other solutions. Now we've covered the Dear Man skill. Here are some ways for you to practice it in an everyday situation. You could go to the shop and ask for some help finding an item. You could ask for a substitution of a meal at a restaurant, for example, chips instead of mash. You could ask someone at work to do something for you, for example, help you with something or make you a cup of tea. You could disagree with someone's opinion. You could ask a person to stop doing something that bothers you. Or you could ask someone you don't know very well what time it is.